That's actually really great that she has so many fans, especially for tennis. It's good. I just remember I didn't even, I don't know, I wasn't even listening to the crowd. I was just focused on the match. But it was crazy out there, so yeah.
She beat her. She actually beat her. She came to Melbourne Park in January, walked into the loudest, most hostile atmosphere any American tennis player had faced in years. Thousands of Filipinos screaming from every corner of that packed court, flags covering every inch of the stands, chants shaking the walls before the first ball was even struck. And she won. She beat Alex Eala. She ended her Australian Open dream in the first round. She did the thing that every hater, every doubter, every "she's just a popular wild card" brigade had been begging someone to do.
Ladies and gentlemen, please do not make any noise during the rally. Game, set, match, Parks, 2-1.
And now, 2 months later, standing in Miami, at the tournament where Eala was born, Alycia Parks just gave her the most ferocious, most genuine, most unexpected compliment in the entire sport. From the woman who beat her, at a Grand Slam, while fighting back tears on the court.
It's actually really great that she has so many fans, especially for tennis. It's good. I just remember...
That is what you just heard in that clip. And if you think that was something, wait until you hear the full story of what happened between these two women. Because the Australian Open match between Alycia Parks and Alex Eala is one of the most extraordinary human stories of the entire 2026 tennis season. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why Parks, of all people, of all the players on this tour, is the one whose praise means more than anyone else's. Strap in. We are going all the way back to Melbourne, and then we're coming back to Miami, and the full picture is going to blow your mind. January 19th, 2026, Melbourne Park, Court 6, Australian Open, first round. The atmosphere on Court 6 was described as electric, a soccer-style environment where every Eala point triggered wild celebrations and chants of, "Let's go, Alex!" from a sea of Philippine flags. And this wasn't just a crowd. This was an event, a pilgrimage. The queue for the Eala match was so long that at some point, fans had to be turned back, turned away, at a Grand Slam for a first-round match against a player ranked 100th in the world. She is a huge draw and a breakout star. When she was playing in Hong Kong in October, we had queues of more than 100 meters long from local Filipinos wanting to see her, said Australian tennis administrator Peter Johnston. "100 meters of people, standing in a queue, before the gates even opened. Because Alex Eala was playing a first-round match. Alycia Parks walked into all of that. 25 years old, American, ranked 100th in the world, career high of world number 40. A player who has done everything right in her career without ever quite breaking through to the elite tier. And she stepped onto that court, Court 6, Melbourne Park, with essentially zero support in the stands and a crowd so overwhelmingly against her that the chair umpire had to issue multiple warnings for crowd behavior. Park said after the match, "It definitely wasn't the worst, but in between first and second serves and the clapping when you miss, that's just something I had to ignore and get used to the whole match." Clapping when she missed, not just cheering for Eala, actively celebrating Park's mistakes. The chair umpire with warnings on the board. The flags and the chants and the noise at levels that the Australian Open had never associated with an outer court first-round match. And Parks had to stand in the middle of all of it, alone, unsupported, emotionally battered, and find a way to play tennis. And then something happened that nobody in that crowd, nobody watching on TV, nobody writing match previews had predicted. Following that first set bagel, losing 6-0 without winning a single game, Parks broke down in tears. She cried. In the middle of a Grand Slam match, in front of thousands of people, in front of cameras broadcasting to the world. A 25-year-old professional athlete, in the most overwhelming moment of her season, sat in her chair between sets and let the emotion come out. The noise had gotten to her. The crowd had found the seam in her armor. And for one moment, one visible, documented human moment, Alycia Parks was breaking. And then she came back. Parks said, "I was starting to think I wasn't focused on the game plan, which is why I played better in the second and third sets. It was now a new match." A new match. She reframed it. While crying, while surrounded by thousands of people chanting for her opponent, she wiped her eyes, reset her brain, and came back out and played the tennis of her life. She relied on 12 aces. She sprinted to a 3-0 lead in the second set. She won 6-3, 6-2 in the final two sets. From a 6-0 first set bagel to a 0-6, 6-3, 6-2 victory. One of the most remarkable individual turnarounds in Grand Slam tennis in years. Parks said afterwards, laughing, "I don't know what my record is with crowds against me, but it definitely puts a fire under me. I would say I'm good when the crowds are against me." She laughed, after crying, after fighting back from a bagel, after winning in the most hostile environment of her career. She laughed and said the crowd put a fire under her. That is a competitor. That is someone who found something deep inside themselves under circumstances designed to break them. But here is the part that the match result doesn't tell you. Here is the part that gets completely buried under the scoreline and the headlines and the first-round exit story. At the end of the match, after Parks had beaten Eala, after the Filipino crowd had finally gone quiet, after the chants had faded and the flags had been lowered, Parks received an ovation. From the very same crowd that had spent 2 hours making her life as difficult as possible. They applauded her. Because Filipino fans, and this is something every establishment figure in tennis needs to understand, are not just passionate, they are fair. They recognize greatness even when it is pointed against their own player. The chants of, "Let's go, Alex," dominated Melbourne Park early. But once Parks had grasped control, she drew an ovation of her own at the end of the match. That ovation told Parks something she had never experienced in her career before. It told her that Eala's crowd, this extraordinary, unprecedented force of human devotion, is not a mob. It is a community, and it respects the game. And the player who fights through everything they throw at her and wins with class gets acknowledged. Alycia Parks walked off court 6 in Melbourne with a win in her pocket, tears drying on her cheeks, and something else, something harder to quantify but impossible to miss. A new understanding of what Alex Eala means to the world. Now fast forward, January 20th, the press conference. Parks said, "It was very difficult. I was expecting it, but I wasn't. She definitely has a good crowd. I just kept telling myself to stay in the zone. Very difficult. She was expecting it, but wasn't." That is the only honest way to describe walking into an Eala crowd for the first time. Every player who has done it, Swiatek, Keys, Paolini, Goff, Lynette, Pegula, every single one of them has come out of that experience saying some version of the same thing. "I knew what was coming. I was still not ready." Because there is no way to be ready for it. There is no precedent in women's tennis for a crowd like this. No manual. No footage from previous tournaments that fully captures the physical weight of 115 million people's love for one 20-year-old girl compressing itself into a single tennis court. But Parks didn't stop there. She didn't just talk about how difficult it was. She didn't go the easy route and complain about the noise or the clapping on double faults or the overwhelming pro-Eala atmosphere that had the chair umpire issuing warnings. She could have. Nobody would have blamed her. She won the match. She earned the right to say whatever she wanted. Instead, she said something that revealed exactly the kind of person Alycia Parks actually is. And it is the reason this video exists. Because Parks looked at Alex Eala's influence on this sport, looked at the court that was packed to maximum capacity for a first-round match, looked at the queue of 100 meters that had to be turned away, looked at the crowd that made her cry and then gave her a standing ovation. And she said what she said in that clip. She praised it, genuinely, without being asked to, without qualifiers, with the specific generosity of spirit that belongs to athletes who love their sport more than they love their own comfort. Now let's put that in context. Because the WTA, the organization that is supposed to celebrate this kind of growth, supposed to champion this kind of global expansion, supposed to be throwing resources and marketing budgets and scheduling priority at the phenomenon that is Alex Eala, had already made a catastrophic error that day before Parks even stepped on court. The Australian Open drew widespread criticism after they scheduled Eala's debut Grand Slam main draw appearance on Court 6, Melbourne Park's designated party court. Not Rod Laver Arena, not Margaret Court Arena, not even Show Court 1, Court 6, a small outer court. For a player whose press conference that same week had generated more views than Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner combined. For a player whose practice sessions had drawn crowds that dwarfed the main stadium. For a player about whom Novak Djokovic, on his way to the men's final, stopped to publicly criticize the scheduling decision.
From Philippines, which is now a big deal. You know, she's been the biggest ever, tennis player from that country, which is a big country, and there's big interest. So things like that happen. I mean, it's you could argue that it was, maybe a poor schedule, and maybe they could schedule him on a bigger court. Yes, but
Djokovic, defending the scheduling rights of a 20-year-old Filipino girl, in a press conference about his own Grand Slam campaign. That is how visible, how undeniable, how completely inescapable the establishment's failure to properly platform Alex Eala had become. That the greatest men's player of all time felt compelled to address it publicly. And the result of that scheduling decision? Fans were turned away at the entrances. The queue stretched 100 meters before the gates opened. Hundreds were forced to stand in areas not designed for viewing because every available seat had been taken. The organization designed the situation. The fans proved why the situation was wrong.
But then again, just the fact that everyone came out and really squeezed into that cozy court, I really appreciate it. I felt so loved, even when I was 5-2 down in the third, still felt the love.
And Alycia Parks, who had to perform inside that situation, who had to find a way to compete amid the chaos the scheduling decision helped create, came out of it still praising Alex Eala's influence. That is character. That is the verdict that matters more than any ranking number or match result or scheduling complaint. The woman who suffered most directly from the crowd that the WTA failed to properly accommodate, who cried on court because of it, who had to rebuild herself between sets because of it, came out the other side still saying the right things, still recognizing what Eala is doing for the sport, still standing in Miami 2 months later, giving her flowers. After the match, Eala said,
and I like to think that the impact that I've had and the platform that I've built has a positive effect on a certain demographic and my...
A following for a reason. Not a following because of a viral moment. Not a following because of one lucky tournament run. A following, deep, devoted, globally distributed, economically transformative, for a reason. And that reason is who she is, what she represents, what she has built, tournament by tournament, match by match, win by win, through 2 years of climbing from the ITF circuit to the top 30 of the world's most competitive women's sports tour. After the loss, Eala posted on Instagram, "I wanted to touch on the enormous amount of support I've received this week. It's truly moving to see how my work can touch so many lives in one way or another. It reminds me that what I do is part of something shared. This year's Australian Open has left a lasting impression and is an experience I'll carry with me as I work moving forward." Part of something shared. She lost her first-round match at the Australian Open. She went home to play doubles. And she posted about shared experience and lasting impressions and moving forward. Not bitterness, not complaints about the small court or the overwhelming pressure or the impossible expectations. Shared experience. That is the philosophy. That is why it keeps growing. Because the fans feel the shared experience radiating back at them from her every time she posts, every time she speaks, every time she writes "Deja vu" on a camera in Miami, or thanks Coco Gauff for being a role model on International Women's Day. And Alycia Parks, who beat her at that Australian Open, who knows her game more intimately than almost anyone on this tour, who has now seen the Eala effect from the most difficult possible vantage point, is in Miami right now saying the same thing the WTA chair is saying, the same thing Coco Gauff said, the same thing Magda Linette said, the same thing Jessica Pegula said from her hotel room in Dubai, listening to the crowd roar at night through the walls. She is good for this sport. She is great for this sport. And every player who has faced her, beaten her, lost to her, watched her, played against her crowd, every single one of them walks away with the same conclusion. Olympic gold medalist Monica Puig, after watching Eala's matches in Abu Dhabi, described her crowds as absolutely wild and said of her impact, "It doesn't matter if they know tennis, they don't know tennis. They show up for their countrywoman. And it's really been super exciting to see. It doesn't matter if they know tennis. They show up. They learn the game by loving the player first, and the player makes them fall in love with the sport in the process. That is how you build a fan base that lasts 50 years. That is how you build the next generation of tennis fans in a country of 115 million people. Not through broadcast deals and marketing campaigns and promotional tours. Through one girl from Quezon City playing the most fearless, most authentic, most human tennis the WTA has seen in a decade." Eala said in Miami this week about her fame, "It's weird because being at home is like the most normal thing, right? But being famous at home, I walk around the streets or go to the restaurants I've gone to since I was a kid, and all of a sudden people are asking for photos. So it's something to get used to. The restaurants she has gone to since she was a kid, the streets she grew up on, the city where her story began. And now she can't walk down them without stopping every 30 seconds for a photo. Not because she sought fame, not because she chased celebrity, but because she worked and competed and won and carried herself with such extraordinary grace through every spotlight and every setback that an entire nation decided, consciously, collectively, without being told to, that she is theirs. That her victories belong to all of them," she said this week at Miami. "Opinions or expectations can change. That is not in your control. What I know are facts and truths, and the truth is that I've been working really hard. And I know I've been taking the right steps and approaching it in the right way. So that gives me more calm. Facts and truths, not rankings, not external validation, not the opinion of every analyst who predicted her ceiling. Facts. She is working hard. She is taking the right steps. She is calm because she knows her own truth. And her truth is that she belongs at this level, and she is still growing into everything she is going to become." Alycia Parks saw it. Parks, who fought through tears to beat her, who endured the most intense crowd environment of her career to beat her, who had every reason to dismiss the Eala story as hype after proving she could handle it, came to Miami and praised her influence anyway, without bitterness, without conditions. Because the truth is the truth regardless of whether you won or lost. And the truth is this: Alex Eala is not just changing women's tennis. She is changing who gets to feel like they belong in it. She is changing which countries produce champions. She is changing which courts need to be the biggest in the building. She is changing which press conferences fill up and which YouTube videos break records, and which cities spend 2 months selling out every seat before the first ball is struck. She is changing everything. And even the women who beat her know it. That is the greatest compliment of all. Laban, Alex, Miami is yours. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell. Alex Eala is back on center court at Hard Rock Stadium this weekend. And this is only the beginning.